Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the DATEABLE podcast, a show where it is our mission to, if you can recite it with us, you've heard this many times, to dig
Dive into the
into
whys.
the whys and whys of people's behavior so we can figure out how to cope and deal and thrive through it all. How about that?
I just envisioned our audience just being like, why? And
And then we're like,
how?
how? Yeah, it's been a fun adventure to do this show, and we always like to talk about the topic of sexuality because it is, I think the topic is fluid in itself and it changes from year to year. And I feel like this term pansexual has been thrown around in the last few years, and Julie and I have really wanted to dig into what it means to be pansexual and why the future may be pansexual.
The
So
future is pansexual.
and I'm
Up for
quite
debate, but yes.
up for debate because we're not psychic, but from what we've seen, the evidence points that way. And our guest today definitely proves that as well.
Yeah, well, I think if you look at the younger generations, it's definitely starting to trend that way, which is why I think the future may be pansexual because, just really like for anyone that is unfamiliar with the term, we're going to dive into it in much more depth. But the idea is that you don't view sex, like you don't view sex and gender, like you view people as people and you fall in love with the person or you're attracted to the person, not because they're a man, not because they're a woman. So it's a little different than bisexuality because in that case, you actually are thinking that there are two defined genders, right? In bisexuality, because you're attracted to both. Where in pansexuality, you're not thinking that way and it's all about the person.
You lead with your humanity, you lead with heart. And I think something we've seen in the past is identity is so core to who we are. At the same time, it is so restricting at the same time. So when we think about our identity, sometimes we feel like we have to act a certain way or do things a certain way just to fulfill what our identity is. But the beauty of pansexuality is that you're not boxed into one identity. So you can have the freedom to lead with your heart.
I feel like there's a lot of celebrities that are coming out as pan. That's the thing. Like Miley Cyrus, Demi Lovato. Those are a few that like come to mind that I think of when are like more in front of this pan movement.
It's a thing. It's a trend. And it's cool and hip and it's more mainstream, but we know it's been around forever. It's just now celebrities are getting a hold of it and they're like, ooh, that's what I've been experiencing this whole time. When you can put a label on it and validate it in society, that's when I feel like that's when when people can openly talk about it. But it's been around for so long.
Yeah, I think the real like when it really becomes the future is when it's not a trend anymore.
Yeah.
When this is just every day, like heterosexuality or I feel like even homosexuality, the way it's perceived now versus probably, 20, 30 years ago was maybe seen more as a quote unquote trend. And now it's very like proven this is here to stay. This is a way that people love. And I think pansexuality is in the same boat.
How exciting. How exciting to have the freedom to love people for who they are and not because of their identity and not because you have to identify with a certain label. It is so liberating to know that that is the future. I'm excited for our future non-existent kids.
They can be whoever they want to be. They can love whoever they want to love. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, not be boxed in. It's so wonderful. I mean, I remember the problems I faced in high school, and I think a lot of people can resonate with this, is battling with your identity, wanting to be the homecoming queen. I don't know why. Why is that even a thing? Wanting to have a boyfriend. Why is that such a thing? Why is that so cool? And now with kids that I talk to who are in high school, those are the least of their worries. Their worries about connection. They're all about in real life get-togethers. They're worried about COVID. There's just bigger things than who's homecoming queen? Like, fuck that. It's nothing anymore.
It's kind of liberating. You know,
It's so liberating.
okay. While we're on the topic of bad teen years, did you see the updated version of She's All That? It's He's All
He's
That.
all that. I have not watched it, but I saw a preview for it and I thought, wow,
I watched it.
that is
I
the
watched
future.
it. It's with Addison Rae, the TikTok star, which says so much. She actually did a better job than I was expecting. And I texted my boyfriend. I'm like, I'm really embarrassed that I'm watching this right now. And then he proceeded to watch it.
Was it good?
Um, it was sentimental because I love that movie growing
Yeah.
up. Like it
Yeah.
reminds me of teenage years, which I think ironically, like movies, the way that movies depict teenage years, I don't know, maybe if you went to school in California, I went to school on the East Coast. I feel like I never saw an outdoor school, yet every
Oh,
movie depicts high school as like this outdoor
outdoors.
campus. I don't know. But yeah, I think She's All That brought back, like with Freddie Prinze Jr., the original, was definitely one of those movies that I can think of. There's sentimental value, and I think that's what drew me to it. And actually, the lead in it, it took me a little while to realize this. The girl that they transformed, she's
Uh-huh.
the mother in this one. She's back.
What?
And Matthew Lillard's like the principal of the school. It's so
Oh my gosh. Because they're all old as fuck now. I mean,
yeah.
Freddie Prince Jr., I wish he made a cameo. Because
He's
that
like,
man's
nope,
like,
nope,
I think
yeah.
he's like 45 or something.
He's done. He's done.
Is he still married to Sarah Michelle Gellar? Now I'm thinking about it.
Who knows? They've fallen off the universe. They're pansexual now. No
They're
big
past that.
deal.
Yeah.
I just made that up. Let's not start rumors.
That's how rumors start. Freddie
They're
Prinze
now
Jr.
they're now on the Wikipedia list of
Oh yeah,
pansexual people.
pansexual
There is,
celebrities.
for anyone curious, there is a Wikipedia list of pansexual celebrities. That's how you know it's up and coming, trendy. Because I'm pretty sure there's no like list of. Well, maybe there's a list of gay celebrities. I shouldn't say that. I've never Googled it.
But somewhere Sarah Michelle Gellar is at her kitchen looking up the list of pansexual celebrities, sees her husband, and
And the
stops in her
rumors,
tracks.
the rumors all from Dateable. This is
She
where it
goes,
happened.
"What the fuck, babe? When did you become pansexual?" And then
This
tell
is clearly what's happening at the Prince Geller home.
me. But that movie, I loved that movie as well, Julie. And then now when I rewatch that movie, it is the most ridiculous thing in the
Oh
world.
yeah. Well, this one is so ridiculous because it's all about influencer culture. That's how they've like redone it. You gotta
Oh,
watch
okay.
it. You gotta
Okay.
watch it. Check back in. We could regroup on it. But
Is there a whole makeover scene? Because that's
yeah.
always my
Oh yeah. But
favorite.
it's the
Okay.
guy. They've reversed genders, which is kind of
Love
up
it.
and
Did
coming.
he take off his glasses and he's super hot? I mean, that's like in
That's always
every
how it
movie.
goes. He should have been pansexual. That's they kind of dropped the ball on that one. It was a
Maybe
little too heteronormative. There was a lesbian couple though, so they brought some in.
it would be they are all that. That would be the
Yeah,
next
that's what
rendition.
they should do. Yep,
They're
there
all
we
that.
go. 5 more years that will come out.
Well, I'm excited to watch that movie. That's going to be on my list. I have a whole list of movies I'm embarrassed to watch around other people, so
Oh
I'm
yeah.
just going to watch them on my own.
Yep.
I'm adding that to my list.
Love it. Love it. Well, it was so nice to see you this week. Yue and I
Yeah.
got to celebrate, which was super fun. And yeah, I think
It's
we
kind of
deserved it.
it kind of reminds me of because I was looking through some of our older dateable photos and we used to be together all the time for our
I
recordings and I
know.
kind of forgot about those days. I forgot what it's like to have people around, in my apartment and we're sitting around on my floor because I didn't have enough furniture for everyone to sit
Yeah.
on. And it was just so fun. It felt like a slumber party or something. And it was so great to be in Julie's apartment because she's got a new apartment. It is gorgeous. It was so beautiful to be in there. And we also took our call in
Yeah.
there with our new Finding Your Person program cohort. So that was our first live call. We met some of the people who are in the program, and it's just a really great time to connect
Yep.
together.
Probably about like half of them were on the call, which was pretty cool to see people. It's always really fun to like meet people. I know it's virtual, but I just feel like you're actually meeting people.
So
Yeah.
something about the virtual, I think that day, that night when we did our call, Julie, really set the tone for the rest of the night because we just felt so warm and I don't know,
Hmm.
ready to be social. So we went to dinner and this old couple next to us was very friendly and they were giving us recommendations on which menu to choose. But turns out their story's so great
Oh,
because
yes.
they definitely look like they were madly in love, right?
Uh-huh. And they were probably in their
70s?
70s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want to say 70s.
Yeah.
And they've been married for a long time, so we were kind of asking what's a secret to such a long marriage.
Well, they asked
And
us what we were celebrating, and we told them we had a dating podcast. So that's how it kind of got kicked off, too.
and people always take that as a jumping off point for their love stories, right?
Yep.
They're like, "Oh, you do a dating podcast? Let me tell you about my love
And we
story."
always ask a little, too, because we're just inherently nosy. So,
Very, very. And her answer was the best. She said the secret is you got to get through two other marriages first.
well, what was so great about their story is they knew each other in middle school, they said,
Yeah,
or
they
like
met when she
growing
was
up.
12. Hmm.
Yeah, and then they went their separate paths. I think she said that she was or she lived abroad for a
Yep.
while,
Was
and
married.
he was in Santa Barbara, so that they live there now, and they were just up for the week visiting San Francisco, and had lived in Santa Barbara basically his whole adult life, and she had traveled all around, and then was brought back there, and their paths crossed later in life when they were both in different life stages. They'd come out of divorces with other people, which is kind of amazing when you think about it. That, I feel like I do strongly believe that like things work out for the right reason and people are brought together for a reason. So the fact that like their paths crossed all these years later, maybe they weren't ready to be together when they
Hmm.
first, like they had these lives that they had to live before they could be together. It kind of reminds me of like even you and your partner, Yue, that you
Hmm.
knew each other years and years before you met, but you kind of needed to grow as individuals and go through your own respective life experiences before you found each other.
And that's why we should stop putting so much pressure on the forever. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. You don't know how your life phases will pan out. But you do know this question of how do you know you found your person? You found your person when you feel like you found your person for right now, for who you are today, where your life is at, and it's a fit for you. Stop putting so much pressure on what the future is
Hmm.
because there is a chance that in our lifetime we find many of our persons
Yep.
and that's okay too. And we shouldn't feel guilty about that or feel fear around that. The fact that they've re-met later in life and their kids kind of grew up together, it's such a beautiful love story, but it's not a love story you hear on these TV shows or
Mm-mm.
in these rom-com movies because these movies don't sell, but we know that this is reality, this is life.
There was a really good question on our first call that we had that was all about with finding your person program. It's how do you, stay like appreciate the process and not stay too fixated on the goal. Like every person you meet are like, is this my person? Is this my
Yeah.
person? Is this my person? And I think, or is this my person? And I think the way that we brought this up was I definitely went through this when I kind of was looking, and I think inherently, even if you're not like, quote unquote looking all the time, you're always wondering a little, is this someone that can develop into
Of
more?
course.
And I think the reality is that maybe it does push you actually to like give a little more and take chances. And like you said, we never know what the future has in store fully. There's some things, especially like as you get to know someone, you may uncover new things. And some of
Hmm.
them may draw you closer to them, and some of them might be things that are deal breakers. And some of those are really apparent right away, and some of them take time to unfold. And I think that's okay. Like, I think that maybe it's not realistic to say like I found my person right away. Like I
Hmm.
think you can have an inkling that you found your person, but I do think a lot of times it does take time. and to develop and see, if this is a fit for the long haul.
Hmm.
And that stuff you just can't get from like date one or two all the time.
Yeah. And then ultimately, maybe in 50 years, you look at the person who's been there all along since you
Yeah.
were 12 years old, and you have this wake up call and think, ah, this is my person. I've
Yeah.
come full circle. I do have a theory, Julie, that people do come full circle in life. I've seen this happen quite a bit where you basically end up with the person either you first had a connection with or someone who resembles the person
Mm.
you first had a connection with.
Interesting. You definitely feel that way, right? About your partner.
Absolutely. And we were at a birthday party a few weeks ago, and we were sitting at a table with a bunch of couples who experienced the same thing. They all went to the same college, did not date in college, knew about each other, and then had a connection in college but didn't pursue it. And then like 20 years later got together. And so I there's something about this full circle because when you meet someone earlier in life, you don't know what you're missing out on yet. So you
Mm-hmm.
almost have to explore all of your options to know what you have is the right thing for you.
Yeah, I think some people that can be the case for sure. I don't know if it's everyone though. Like, I don't know if that actually is how I operate as much. Like, I think for me, what I've experienced is every person builds on the next person because I've gotten like more confident and I've gotten more clear about what I need in a partner. So I don't know if I would necessarily want to go full circle to who I first had that connection with because I don't know if that's who I would be attracted to today. I think I've just had so much growth over the years that what I'm looking for in a person completely changed.
Mhm.
So I think it can be either or. We talk about this too a lot. It's like sometimes people's problem is they're not living the life that, like they're kind of holding back and waiting for a partner. And then other people are just way too independent. So I think some of it is knowing yourself too, because I think a lot of times we can be on two ends of the spectrum. And usually it's like somewhere in the middle is the sweet spot.
Finding that sweet spot. That'll be our next program. Finding your sweet spot. Now you found your person. We're going to help you find your sweet spot.
Some announcements this week. The typical join Love in the Time of Corona Facebook group by the Dateable Podcasts. That's the public group. That's where people, post questions and community members will chime in and really support each other along this dating journey. Always amazed by the questions in there. And then the sounding board is our premium community where we have these virtual events. We're calling them the weekly sound offs. We have office hours with Yue and I. With the weekly sound offs, we have our host team lead discussion, like topic based discussions. We've had ones about like the decision to have children or not. We had fear of dating again and how to overcome it. We've had all sorts of different topics that really resonated with folks. And it's a really great way for people to kind of, get things out. You and I were talking about this. I think part of our journey that's been helped us so much is that we've been able to talk it out along
Hmm.
the last 5 years. And in a way, the sounding board kind of provides you that experience to talk it out with your fellow sounding board members. And then also ask us questions too in the monthly group chat that we have, the coffee chat. That's a live call with the two of us. So if you're interested in that, go to dateablepodcast.com/sounding board.
And if you are really enjoying our conversations in this podcast, do your friend a favor and send them a link because we
Yeah.
find that that is some of the best ways for our friendships to blossom. We've seen so many people say, "Oh, I got closer to my friend because I sent her this episode about relationships. Do you really want one?" And now we talk about it all the time because I think listening to these episodes, even for us, Julie and I, we have these topics that every time we come together, we're like, "Well,
Mhm.
let's talk about that last episode. That was what did you think about it?" And it just, I think, hearing all the different perspectives brings you closer together as friends, too. Yeah, send them a link.
It's the modern day book club. I feel
Yeah.
like book clubs never work out, at least the book clubs I were in, because reading a book is a lot of effort and no one ever was on the same schedule with each other. It would end up just being let's get together and drink wine night instead. But listening to a podcast is so low investment. You could do it on a walk. It's usually an hour, hour and a half max. There's so many there's so many ways that this can be the new book club.
Yes, yes, for sure. And I want to give a quick shout out to Alice, who I met randomly this week, who happens to be a listener and also part of our Finding Your Person program. So I thought serendipity have brought us
Hmm.
together. And I just want to say hello, Alice. Thanks for listening.
I love it. I always love when we randomly meet listeners. It's always super fun. So keep it coming. It does always prove that we're always a couple layers separated from people too. Even, in our Facebook groups,
Hmm.
we're able to see mutual friends. And there were some people that I saw in our Facebook group, in the Finding Your Person group, that I had mutual friends with. And they're people I haven't talked to in years that
Wow.
live across the country. So it's not that they heard about the podcast through this person, probably,
Right, right.
but it just shows that everyone has some connection. There's always the 6 degrees of separation, right? 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, but 6 degrees of Dateable podcast.